Hello and welcome to another episode of For Zion's Sake, the CUFI UK podcast. My name is Alex and I'm joined here by Alastair.
Hello, Alex. Hello, everybody.
And this week we're going to be speaking about anti-Semitism in lots of different forms, but largely about words. And we've heard anti-Semitic statements from lots of people in the last couple of weeks, whether it be from world leaders to local councillors to people on the streets in Britain. Anti-Semitism is running rampant, and it's not really good news, is it? Because we've just had a new report that's been released by the Community Security Trust,
That's right.
the CST, and it doesn't make for good reading.
No, so their report is are the figures from 2023. This is an annual report. CST have been collating all reports. Now, these are only reported incidents of anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And of course, not all instances of anti-Semitism get reported, but it is an insight into really the very worrying climate of anti-Semitism that has, or as the figures reveal, show a dramatic increase last year. In fact, last year's figures are the highest on record.
Yeah.
And not just that, but they are double the previous highest figures of 2021.
Yeah, exactly.
So think about that. There's 4,103 anti-Jewish incidents recorded, hate crimes recorded here in the United Kingdom. And yes, it should alarm us, it should concern us, and it should, as you say, prompt us to really do something about it and to waken up to the dire situation that we are facing. So the previous record of 2,233 incidents was in 2021.
Yeah. Which was again when Israel was at war with Hamas, a shorter war.
That was the May. The what now looks like a flare up.
Yes, compared
with what is happening right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does show a worrying trend of anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And there are a few things which we can probably take away from that before we maybe go into some of the more specific incidents that have been taking place. One of the things which the report shows is the anti-Semitic incidents around British schools.
Right.
They have tripled since 2022. And the same applies to university-related incidents. Now, we know that many Jewish schools have increased security.
Yeah.
We know from previous reports also that there is an increase in anti-Semitism in the classroom, with teachers reporting incidents as well as arguments taking place between students, etc. But what this report highlights or records are the number of incidents that are taking place in the vicinity of schools,
right? Okay.
Where Jewish students are being targeted. And I think that is a very worrying thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And understandably, there are many Jews in this country right now who are well aware of this rise of anti-Semitism, and I think the message from us here at CUFI is definitely a clear stand that we are with you.
Yeah,
we are equally concerned, and that we are supporting you during these very challenging times.
Yeah, because I know with the school anti-Semitism sort of incidents, there's even been examples of teachers singling out Jewish students and making comments or treating them differently to the rest of the class. I remember one being where a teacher basically put the Jewish student in a separate area to everyone else, and she said, just as how Israel treats the Palestinians, that kind of thing. And this was a Jewish kid, being treated that way by a teacher.
Yes.
Completely unacceptable behavior. And I think as well, saying that it's risen from 2022, like that's where they've seen like a bigger rise. That probably goes to show, the TikTok influence that's been taking place in the last couple of years on particularly the younger generation. I wonder if that's actually had an impact.
That's a good question. I mean, there are various, just to look at some of the categories, for example. One when it comes to this over 4,000 incidents, 955 of the incidents, the offender has referred to the Holocaust, Hitler, or the Nazis, and that's double the previous year's total. 70 cases of Holocaust denial and 184 celebrating or glorifying the Holocaust. The CST also found cases of damage and desecration of Jewish property that rose by 146% to 182. And there were 43 incidents of damage to Jewish homes or vehicles, 9 to synagogues, 14 to businesses or Jewish organizations, 9 to Jewish schools, and 7 to public menorahs during Hanukkah. So that just gives us an overview. I mean, the very fact that so many of these incidents have some relation to the Holocaust also show the real... Well, I think it just tells you something about that hatred and the nature of the anti-Semitism.
And the vast majority of these incidents are abusive behavior. So it's threats, shouting at them, shouting abuse, like you said, referring to the Nazis and things. Interestingly, there's been 266 physical attacks as well. So that's not one a day yet, which is good. But I mean, it's getting up there. It's like, just think about that. Every other day, a Jewish person's being violently attacked in Britain. That's absolutely insane.
Absolutely. And when you consider the population of the Jewish community in the United Kingdom, it's not large.
No.
And what is it? 0.5%?
Yeah, it's very low. It's like under 300,000.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's between 250 and 300,000.
Yes, but I think there's also a wider lesson that we can take from this. And that is, of course, the Israel-Hamas war, which of course is continuing, started last year after and in response to the 7th of October terrorist attacks by Hamas. Many people have rightly pointed out that these figures have increased, coinciding, of course, with the Israel-Gaza war, and could conclude that that increase is as part of the anger and reaction against Israel's responsive actions in Gaza. However, the figures show something very, very, very important, I think.
And troubling.
And and that is, let me ask you, when do you think these figures peaked last year?
Well, I know.
You know. Okay, I'm not going to ask you. I'm going to ask those listening and watching. When do you think these figures peaked last year? Well, they peaked in the immediate aftermath of the 7th of October terrorist attacks.
So before Israel even responded.
Yeah, exactly. Israel responded in terms of troops on the ground on a couple of weeks later? But the figures show that the peak of anti-Semitism last year was in the week that followed. In fact, 416 incidents in the week of the 7th of October. Now think about that. Now, there were 80 incidents on one day alone. So...
and that was the time where Israel was seen as the victim by the public because it had been attacked. Its people had been brutally murdered, raped, etc. So Israel hadn't done anything wrong.
And they still hadn't done anything wrong anyway, even when they did their response. But I think this it certainly challenged part of my thinking personally, and I think it would challenge a lot of people's thinking. And we might actually be in error when we almost adopt the narrative that we are hearing and seeing in the media, which purports that anti-Semitism is in direct response to the Israel-Gaza war. Okay, there you can attribute, incidents in terms of pro-Palestinian anger and people's opposition to what's taking place in Israel. That doesn't make it right, by the way.
Yeah,
Anti-Semitism is anti-Semitism.
definitely.
But I think we do a disfavor to highlighting the severity and the root and the motive of anti-Semitism, and that is hatred against the Jewish people.
Exactly.
And we saw that on the very day of the 7th of October,
Yeah.
when there were people in the streets of London, and the next day, the Sunday, when there were people gathering in city centres, showing their hatred towards Israel, their support for Hamas.
Yep.
Okay, that was even before Israel had taken military action, and yet that is what the figures show was the peak of anti-Semitism last year.
Yeah.
So let us not do a disservice to the message of that anti-Semitism is on the rise because of the war, okay, and because of Israel's military response. No, Israel is taking a military response because of the hatred that is directed towards it.
Yeah, exactly. And so what you're saying there is that anti-Semitism was galvanized by Hamas's terrorism.
Yes,
so
I think it gave it breath.
Yeah,
I think
it gave it energy.
It gave it energy.
Yeah,
it triggered, to use a better word, it triggered the anti-Semitism which was there.
Yeah,
and yes, of course, we are seeing it manifest itself in terms of rallies against Israel's military action, but that is just on the surface.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this shows actually a lot of the incidents we're talking about here today show how the anti-Semitic attitudes of the individual were present and there long before this happened, and this was just the sort of the spark that lit the fuse kind of thing.
Yes,
that's what we're seeing in a lot of these incidents.
Absolutely. So 416 was in the these incidents were in the first week alone.
Yeah.
But in the first couple of weeks before Israel took military on the ground military action, it was 2/3 of the overall figures of 2023.
Yeah, that's the thing. It just shows like those last 3 months, the last, and I guess, and we're now in February, the last 5 months, like that has stayed quite high or very high. It's higher than record levels. And when you look at the beginning sort of 9 months of the year last year, actually we were on course to have a good year where anti-Semitic events were lower.
Yeah, because it dropped actually in 2022.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, because so 2021 was a peak. It dropped in 2022. It was on target to either drop or stay the same as the 2022 levels, and instead we got the highest level of anti-Semitic incidents ever in the last 3 months.
Yes.
So the last 3 months contributed to that total figure.
Yeah. So that's the overall picture of what took place in 2023.
Yep.
And of course, here we are at the end of February 2024, and we have in this podcast highlighted some of the specific incidents, and now we're just going to cover a few of the very latest things that we're aware of, which actually puts some of the context of what we've been talking about, gives some real examples.
Yeah.
And we don't have to look far, sadly. This week, Alex, a birth certificate belonging to a Jewish baby was defaced by someone within the UK passport office.
Yeah.
We talked in the last podcast about anti-Semitism within the world of politics, but also that we are likely to see an increase in anti-Semitism within various professional sectors, people that are working where they allow their anti-Israel bias to affect their professional outworking. And this is, I think, a good example of that. The UK Passport Office is investigating who actually did it within that office. But basically, this this British Jewish family made an application for their young baby.
6-month-old baby girl.
6-month-old baby girl who was born in London. The father and mother were both born in Israel.
Yep.
They send the birth certificate, as you do with a passport application, and they get it back. And the word Israel, in terms of the place of birth for the father, was scribbled out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and also it was ripped as well. So it looks like it was half ripped. I wonder, I kind of just speculating here, I wonder if the person who saw it saw Israel and then thought, I'll rip it, and then thought, oh no, I can't rip it. I'll just scribble on it and then
Israel.
send it back to them or something. Because clearly, whoever was dealing with that, the rage inside them, the hatred against Israel inside them, bubbled up to the point where they would deface. I mean, this is a child. Like, she's not done anything wrong. And they were just so outraged that the parents could be born in Israel. And so,
I know.
It's a crazy thing, isn't it? And I know,
it's crazy.
We know that this hatred is out there, but it's still, these sorts of things are just, they boggle the mind. Like,
it
how
really
on earth
does.
that...
And to cross that line in terms of your work, to show your rage and cross out a birth certificate,
I know,
a legal document.
I know.
I think it's it's very sad, and it highlights. Well, it highlights the anti-Semitism that we have been referring to.
Yeah.
But how awful for that young family to have that come back.
I know, and that
it's very symbolic, isn't it? It's not just a piece of paper with it's really symbolic.
Well, it's one of
attitudes.
And
towards
also,
Israel.
Yeah, sorry, I'm interrupting you there.
No.
But I think as well, like, as a birth certificate is also like a very important document in like proving who you are and your identity. So it's also something which is like, you can't replicate a birth certificate so easily. It's not, that's your official document as to how you came into the world. It's like actually a very personal thing to face. Yeah. And to do that against someone who you don't know, who's a 6-month-old baby girl, it's just, I mean, the amount of hatred that must be there is,
I know.
It's just beyond belief.
Well,
but, there's other incidents as well.
There are other incidents. I mean, talking about bias within your professional work, there was the court ruling on the regarding the 3 pro-Palestinian protesters, 3 women who back in November were arrested and charged for having, during the demo in London, having pictures of hand gliders on the back of their coats. So they were wanting to demonstrate support for Hamas, but they wanted to do it in a way which they thought that they could perhaps get around the law.
Yeah.
And so they had pictures of parachuters. And just to explain the significance of that for anyone who isn't aware, that on the 7th of October, Hamas fighters used hand gliders. Sorry, I said parachute, but hand gliders.
And paragliders as well.
And paragliders in order to cross the border into Israel. It was footage which was on all of the newsreels.
Yeah.
And so that most definitely, during that demo, to have that piece of paper stuck on with sellotape on the back of a coat was a demonstration of support for Hamas. Let's make no qualms about it.
Yeah.
But then what's the ruling, Alex?
Well, I'll just clarify a bit there as well. Not clarify, but emphasize that. I mean, the paragliders, the only thing the paragliders did was they paraglided into Israel and they murdered people.
Yes.
There's video footage of them paragliding in. They are the ones who attacked the Nova Festival, killed 300 people at a music festival. Yeah. You're not going to put a paraglider on your back unless you're supporting the very action of murdering those people at the Nova Festival.
Yes.
So there is absolutely no doubt in my mind, at least.
Yes. And this is during a pro-Palestinian march.
Exactly. So there's no doubt. Yeah. So, but the judge, Tan Ikram, he is known to be pro-Palestinian. He has liked anti-Israel posts. One of them said, free Palestine to the Israeli terrorists, both the United Kingdom and the United States. And of course, Israel, you can run, you can bomb, but you cannot hide. Justice will be coming for you. So he's clearly, I mean, he's even anti-Israel, anti the UK in that. And yet he's a UK judge. But he said, you've not hidden the fact you were carrying these images. You crossed the line, but it would have been fair to say that emotions ran very high on this issue. Your lesson has been well learnt. I do not find you were seeking to show any support for Hamas. Wow. And he gave them a 12-month concession.
Suspended sentence?
No, so 12-month conditional charges is what they had. So no prison time, no conviction or anything like that. So
they were let off.
And he said there was no evidence of support from Hamas. Well, this is someone who, calls Israel, the UK and the USA terrorists, shows full support for the Palestinians, and then excuses in my opinion, he's excused the
Yes.
support for terrorism and claimed that there is no evidence.
But not just that. He's not just excused it. He has said, in his opinion, that they were not showing support for Hamas.
Yeah. And yet...
Which actually says as much about him.
Well, of course, yes.
As it does.
Yeah, and so I personally think he's lying. I think he knows it shows support for Hamas, but actually he probably supports Hamas himself, and therefore, that's my opinion, personal opinion.
That's
and
our
so
opinion.
Yeah, but I mean, how else can you say it? Like, he's basically defending Hamas supporters who have openly supported Hamas, and he's using his position to manipulate that decision.
Yes.
And I just don't think it's right. So it is now under review, by the way. The government has spoken out against this and said we will investigate and see if there needs to be a different ruling on this. So, yes, that
because
action is
if
being
we
taken.
are suspecting bias, we spoke about it in the last week's podcast about the doctor in London. Here we have a court judge showing their bias. These are people with whom we are who have should have a respectful position within society.
Yeah.
That we are dependent upon people like this within society to be able to be the ones that counter some of the anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And not give it space.
Yeah, exactly. And and the law, I mean, the government passed the law banning support for Hamas.
Yes.
And yet somehow there's these legal sort of, ways of twisting out of it. And obviously if you've got a corrupt judge, it's that sort of thing. It's not right because it undermines the whole sort of attempt at countering terrorism and racism and so forth.
It also undermines efforts to stamp out anti-Semitism, which is expressed during pro-Palestinian rallies.
Yeah.
And just maybe moving on to that, the pro-Palestinian rally, which took place again on Saturday.
Yep.
Do you want to just share a few thoughts about that? Because again, we saw a lot of hatred towards Israel.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was, a couple 100,000 people. I think it was, there were reports of Jewish people who were choosing not to go into London that day or not to go out whilst the march was on because they were scared of intimidation.
Yeah.
There were incidents where I saw this one video of a man who was stood there holding a sign basically asking, is Hamas a terrorist group, yes or no? And as a result, I mean, it wasn't even saying Hamas is a terrorist group, but still people tried punching him. Someone was throwing bottles at him. Like, he was actually behind a fence. Right. And so the protesters couldn't quite reach him, sort of thing. But one of them tried to punch him, another tried to grab his legs, another was trying to urge him on. They were shouting abuse. People were, all this thing. And this wasn't just like one or two people. This was like dozens of people in this crowd who were saying it, to the point where I think an usher or something came along and sort of urged him to move away for his own safety, probably, rather than anything. But it was just like that sort of thing has happened in multiple different areas.
Yeah. Is that a different example to the gentleman who was wearing a Star of David and he was told to tuck it inside his coat? Yeah, so totally different, because the incident was in with the man holding the sign was in London. The one you're talking about was a protest in Glasgow. And there was a man just stood there with a Star of David necklace on. Yes.
And he was watching the protesters walk past him. The police officer came up to him and basically said, there's only 3 of us. There's lots of them. We can't protect you if they attack you. Yeah. So for your own safety, please put it away. So it wasn't. I think the police officer was actually trying to be nice to him.
Yeah, I saw the video, and I know that there was a lot of, a lot of strong opinion directed towards the police officer. Having watched the video, I honestly think the police officer was being honest and trying to protect this Jewish man. As you say, he said there are only 3 of us. If they are triggered, is what he said. We wouldn't be able to. Now, in defense of the police officer, yes, I think he was wanting to protect, and the police do have a responsibility to try and to prevent crime and to protect people. Yeah. But the very fact that he had to do it, and he felt compelled to do it, is not right in any way whatsoever. A
No.
man should be able to stand, a man or woman should be able to stand, anyone,
Yeah.
with a
Religious
Star
symbol.
of
Yeah.
David,
Yeah.
and not have to be protected by the police.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think it also shows the police officer was probably aware this is a Jewish religious symbol and these people are going to be triggered by it. Well, what does that mean? Anti-Semitism. It doesn't mean, like, he wasn't there waving an Israeli flag or shouting anything to them. He was just simply wearing a Star of David.
Yeah.
And I mean, moving on to another Star of David, there was a statue of Amy Winehouse that was vandalized. So Amy Winehouse is a Jewish musician who, the late Amy Winehouse, she has passed away. There's a statue of her in London, and someone saw the Star of David pendant that she has, or necklace that she has, and they put a Palestinian flag sticker over the top of it. So again, this is not someone related. This is not an Israeli. This is a British Jewish person. They've targeted that Jewish symbol with a Palestinian flag. And I think it just shows, we've talked about this many times on the podcast, we are often told by politicians and activists, this is not a spiritual battle. This is not a fight between, anti-Semitism or whatever. It's just about land. Well, no, we know it's a spiritual battle. We know it is about land. We know it's an anti-Semitic thing.
Well, also those who are saying no, they're not anti-Semitic, they're only anti-Israel, are actually proving that to be a complete fallacy.
Yeah.
Because if you are going to cover up a Star of David on a statue of a Jewish woman with a Palestinian flag, then, well, that is anti-Semitic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now, you also mentioned about previously about the intimidation of these pro-Palestinian rallies. Now, we are seeing more frequently now the intimidation moving from these controlled protests into other arenas.
Yeah.
And in the next example, the targeting of a Conservative MP, Tobias Ellwood, as one example, and a very serious example of these anti-Israel activists going and standing outside his family home.
Yeah.
And in fact, Tobias Ellwood had to leave with his family. He was advised by police to leave his home to go elsewhere.
I know.
I mean, this is Britain in 2024, where our members of parliament are not safe in their own home, and their family and children are not safe.
I know. Well, let's put it this way. When you've got a terrorist organization like Hamas that is being openly supported in the streets of London, the people who are supporting them, they're supporting terrorism. And what they're actually doing is they're starting to act like terrorists. They are terrorizing people. They're terrorizing the Jewish community. They're terrorizing the family of a politician. It's terror. I think we should say, this is moving from the right to protest to actually they are being intimidating. They are terrorizing this family, for example. And I just think it just shows the fruit of it. It's kind of like with Iran. We always talk about how Iran's biggest export is terrorism. I mean, they fund terrorist groups and then they act like terrorists. They threaten like terrorists. It's that sort of thing of the outworking of the. Does it make sense what I'm saying? It's sort of like an outworking of it.
Yeah.
So and going to there was also an MP who was targeted with an arson attack, wasn't there? A few months back.
Mike Freer has said that he's not going to be standing again for re-election. Because he's been targeted for several years because of his stand with Israel, and also because of his solidarity with the Jewish people. Quite frankly, he lives in a constituency where there is a large Jewish population, and so he is thankfully supportive of the Jewish community, and that is enough for him to have been targeted. Now, this arson attack, which was initially described in the media as just being a shed in his in the actually the back garden of his constituency office. In fact, it was his constituency office. Looking at the photos, his office's desk furniture, etc., is completely gutted out.
Yeah, it's all burned.
It's all burned. And so even though I think the investigation is ongoing regarding who did it, he has said that was the final straw.
Yeah.
By the way, he was also an intended target by the murderer of David Amis,
Right.
MP.
Yeah.
There was a plot to stab him.
Right.
And at the 11th hour, he got called away to a particular meeting, and so the plot, failed in that respect. And then, very sadly, 1 month later, this attacker, this murderer, this jihadist, Islamist, attacked David Amis. I'm just giving that as a background to the fact that this arson attack was the final straw for him, and I think we can sympathise why that is the case, but it's very sad.
Yeah, and but it's serious as well. I mean, like look at the fact that there was a politician who was killed by a radical Islamist who supported the Palestinians.
Yes,
and then a few months or a year or so later, we've got this incident where, this MP has his office literally burned, like it's uninhabitable sort of thing because it's burnt, damaged that much. And the media actually downplayed it.
Yes.
The media has not helped fuel the fire, but they are not doing enough to actually stand up against this hatred. It's a complete not miscarriage of justice in terms of like the law, but in terms of the media not doing their job in correctly reporting these incidents.
Yes.
Because when I read that, it was like, oh, they burned a shed, you move on sort of thing. Although I didn't, because obviously I'm a bit more interested in these things. But a lot of people would have read that, oh, someone just burnt a shed, it's not that bad. No, they targeted his office. And this is someone who was who was targeted in the same way that a politician was when he was murdered for his beliefs.
Yes.
So, that's it. That's shocking.
And another example, this was just the other week, was the gathering by pro-Palestinian protesters at the British Museum. Now, I think this is an interesting story for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's helpful to point out that the pro-Palestinian movement have found a friendly partner in the climate activist group, such as the Just Stop Oil group. Yeah. In fact, Just Stop Oil group have been reportedly providing training to pro-Palestinian activist groups.
Yeah.
Now, so this is a very interesting marriage because we are now seeing more tactics that we have seen by climate activists now being adopted by the pro-Palestinian movement.
Yeah.
And so the protest which took place inside the British Museum was because of a 10-year, £50 million deal that the museum has made with BP.
Right.
Okay. Now, the climate activists are not very happy about that. However, they have also recognised that BP is drilling for oil off the coast of Israel.
Right.
So, the emergence of these two ideas meant that the protesters went into the British Museum protesting against their partnership with BP and also their connection, BP's connection with Israel. It's a little bit of a
but they find any connection.
They find any connection. However, this was in every sense of the word an anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian protest inside the British Museum.
Yeah.
And they did a sit-in, and I don't know if you've been to the British Museum, but as you go in, there's a really large atrium, really impressive, large building which your voice echoes in it.
Right.
And looking at the photographs, there are probably, they reported 50, but looking at the photos, there are a couple of hundred.
Right.
And they are gathered in the entire atrium of this building. If you were a visitor, you would not be able to get to the various exhibits without walking through them.
Yeah.
And there they are shouting, pro-Palestinian statements. And this is the statement from the British Museum. They said, "The British Museum respects other people's right to express their views, and allows peaceful protest on site at the museum as long as there is no risk to the collection, staff, or visitors. I'll say that again. The British Museum respects other people's rights and allows peaceful protests on site at the museum. This is inside the museum.
Yeah.
They allow it. It's not even outside the gates. This is inside. They allow it. And here is why I think the British Museum is completely wrong.
Yeah.
Our field is not in terms of climate activism, okay? But I would make a and by the way, just putting a personal thought is, I have been, like many other people, frustrated at the antics of Just Stop Oil, which we've been seeing on the news. I think it's completely unacceptable.
Yeah.
However, despite how disruptive those tactics are, it is different.
Yeah.
Because a pro-Palestinian protest, an anti-Israel protest is, as has been demonstrated, intimidating and is a risk to visitors of the museum, as well as imagine any Jewish visitor, any Jewish family,
or Israeli even,
going to the British Museum and having to walk through that.
I know.
That is why the British Museum is completely wrong, I believe, in applying the same. And I don't agree with it anyway, even for any protest, quite frankly.
Well, I just think it's ridiculous. I mean,
think it's ridiculous.
If you take it to the limit on that, I mean, what if you literally had peaceful protest in every single exhibit of the museum every single day?
So
it would be ridiculous.
So I think that is wrong. That's wrong anyway. But that's a separate issue, because what we are focusing on here is the intimidatory nature of the anti-Israel movement.
Yeah.
And the British Museum should recognise that actually them saying, as long as it's not hurting anyone, I believe is flawed.
It is flawed. And also, we were talking earlier before the podcast about how actually people are protected in lots of different areas: their age, their race, their gender, but also their nationality.
Yes.
And actually, if you intimidate or discriminate against someone because of their nationality, for example, Israelis, that is a crime under the 2010 Equalities Act. So basically, if the British Museum is not protecting, it's allowing a crime to happen, really. Because if there was an Israeli tourist who walked through there and they are being intimidated and treated differently, or if they reveal themselves to be Israeli and then they are, attacked or abused, that is, you know what I'm saying? It's like enabling crime to happen.
Yes.
It's not a peaceful protest against a nebulous thing. For example, Just Stop Oil or another thing. It's not targeted.
It's annoying. It's disruptive. It's frustrating. But we are to an extent safe.
Yeah, but also it's not an individual people group being targeted.
Yeah.
Right? It's a product or an industry. Whereas when you're protesting against Israel, you're targeting an individual people group, which is a protected people group in this country.
Yes,
so
right.
That's where it's wrong.
I agree.
Yeah.
So finally, to conclude these few examples of current incidents of anti-Semitism, this week in the news, a Liberal Democrat councillor has revealed her anti-Semitism in probably the most spectacular fashion. Unguarded. Let's put it that way. Do you want to just explain that?
Yeah, so Liberal Democrat councillor Pat Marsh, she is a lovely little old lady, a grandmother, completely harmless person who has vile anti-Semitism inside of her. So, she has been a councillor for 33 years, and here are some of the things that she has said. So she said...
Okay, we brace ourselves. Go on.
She said, "This is what you Jews are doing. I hope you feel proud. You are a disgrace to this world." She's also said, "I hope you Jews out there feel proud of yourselves. For a so-called religious group, you are evil."
Wow.
She said, "This is a Holocaust. Don't the Jews remember when it was done to them? It is outrageous." She said, "Money speaks louder than words. I totally agree. Israel owns the USA." So a lot of anti-Semitic tropes coming out here.
Wow. A catalogue of them.
Catalogue of those. She said, "This is pure evil." These are all tweets, by the way.
Yeah.
"This is pure evil being done by a so-called religious country. We imposed the Jews on these people after the Second World War, and now they are suffering hugely." And she said, "The world should be screaming, 'Stop this genocide now. The Jews are vile,' showing they have no care for others other than themselves." Wow. That is
Wow.
a whole load of anti-Semitism, and it obviously got her suspended from the Liberal Democrats.
Good.
But more than that, this actually is one of the cases where the anti-Semitism was to the point where the police arrested her and are now investigating.
Okay.
Because, so this is not just a faux pas, this is not just something which could be interpreted as anti-Semitism, it's not just a political thing where someone gets suspended for political reasons. No, the police have got involved because this is actual criminal anti-Semitism.
Yes.
She has expressed views which are a crime in this country.
Yes.
And
just
so,
to think she has local public office.
yes,
It's
and that's
just horrendous.
I know. And the thing is as well, she's refusing to step down. So she is
I don't
still...
think she's going to end up having much choice.
Well,
but
I think that's the
let's
case.
hope so, because,
Yeah.
we've given some of the examples of anti-Semitism. She's fulfilling a whole multitude.
Yeah, exactly.
Of them. I mean, it's horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, which we don't have time for today. But, I mean, there's anti-Semitic tropes. She's just spouting hatred against the Jews. She's attacking, she's comparing Israel to the Nazis. Like, there's so many different things, saying they control people, all this stuff. It is just, it's horrible.
We need to follow this up, Alex, because if she does return to the ballot paper...
Yeah.
she'll
be an independent if she does. By the way. She won't be in the Lib Dems.
We need to, whatever constituency she is in, we need to have a look at that, because we do not want people with those views running for public office.
Yeah.
Shall we turn to scripture?
Yes, I think so.
Proverbs chapter 18, verse 21 says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue."
Yeah.
Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Much of what we have been considering in this podcast has been verbal expressions of anti-Semitism, verbal expressions of hate. We know that what the tongue speaks is from the heart.
Yep.
And it's a challenge to all of us, because we want to be speaking life. We want to be pronouncing life over Israel, life over the Jewish people. And the way to do that, I believe, is to be grounded in the Word of God, because it's from the Word of God that we are able to be properly rooted to produce the kind of fruit, the kind of life and goodness that is able to frame our views in order to bless Israel, bless the Jewish people, not curse Israel, not curse the Jewish people with words. That is what the anti-Semite is doing. That is what that lady was doing.
Yep.
She was cursing the Jewish people with her lips. God does not like that.
No, she's actually cursing herself as well, because God says, herself. "I will curse those who curse you."
Yeah. So we have to take this very seriously. We need to pray that she'll really do a U-turn, of course.
Yeah.
But there are so many people who are harboring these anti-Semitic thoughts.
Yeah.
And that is what should be, I think, of a real concern for us, that this is a separation of death and life. Israel stands for life.
Yeah.
And, anti-Semitism represents death, but life will overcome death.
Yep, I agree. I think we need to be clear, even though we've been saying there's a lot of negativity in this, we need to let the Jewish people know that we are here for them. They are not alone in this.
Yes.
There are hundreds of thousands of Christians who are connected with us, with CUFI.
Yeah.
But even more than that, there are millions of Christians in Britain who are, who love God, who believe the Bible, who love the Jewish people, who love Israel. And we as Christians need to show the Jewish people they are not alone. Because it's now more important than ever before. This is record levels of anti-Semitism. Yes. And we need to show record levels of support for Israel and the Jewish people.
Yes. And we need to speak it, Alex.
Yeah.
We need to voice it.
Yeah.
Because, we know that the tongue can be used as a weapon to harm and to destroy, as much as it is as a tool to build and to heal.
Yeah.
So, of course, we want to see peace in the Middle East.
Yep.
But that is going to come by us speaking the truth, by speaking blessing upon Israel.
Yeah.
So, let us take upon ourselves that conviction of what you've said, Alex, in terms of we want the Jewish people in Britain to hear that we as Christians stand with you, that we want to be voices to build and to heal and to love and to bless, not to pull down, not to destroy. And hopefully, that through all of this, the Jewish people will see that Christians are meaning what we say.
Yeah.
We are speaking with the power of our tongue for life and for blessing.
Yeah, definitely. And that leads us on quite nicely, actually, to the Christian Pledge for Israel. So CUFI UK, we have a Christian Pledge for Israel, which we want all Christians who love Israel to sign. And it is a way to bless Israel with your words. The pledge, if you want to sign it, go to www.cufi.org.uk/pledge. The link is in the description of this video or podcast, or however you're viewing it. The pledge is simple. It says, as a Christian, I stand on the authority of God's word concerning the nation of Israel and the land of Israel to the Jewish people as an everlasting covenant. Therefore, I will bless Israel with my words and actions. I refuse to be silent in witnessing the evil of anti-Semitism and stand in solidarity with the Jewish people worldwide. I will seek to be a beacon of truth for Israel in my church, my community, and my nation. I will pray for the peace of Jerusalem and speak words of blessing upon the Jewish people, declaring, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Because I am a Christian, I stand with Israel. So please do, if you are a Christian and you love Israel, please do sign the Israel Pledge to show Israel that there are many, many Christians in Britain who are standing with the Jewish people. And also, there's another way that you can show blessing Israel with your tongue, and that is, as you can see here, we have the Aaronic blessing, the priestly blessing, which was commanded by God to be spoken over the children of Israel. And actually, the Israel Pledge, the last bit there, the Lord bless you and keep you, the Lord make his face shine upon you, etc., that is from the Aaronic blessing. And so we have it available in different formats. It was available as a free gift with any donation before as a magnet. But because it was so popular and we had so many people asking if they could buy it, we have now created some products. It's a unique design for CUFI UK. And so we have cards that are available. We have a framed picture, which is available. And we have the magnet, which is available now to purchase as gifts that you can buy either for yourself or for friends. And they are... well, it is a blessing over Israel, and we want to counter the curses by showing blessings to Israel. Yeah.
So please, if you would like to purchase one or more of these items, then please go to our store, which is store.cufi.org.uk. And I think it's also helpful to know that all purchases made through the CUFI UK store do go towards supporting the work of Christians United for Israel.
Yeah, and a key focus for us is combating anti-Semitism. So we have different areas. We do support Israel directly, especially at this time of war.
Yes.
But in terms of we're helping trauma victims and other areas of work there. But the other side of things we're doing is we're combating anti-Semitism in the UK. And so this directly goes to our work here in the UK. So when you are supporting CUFI, you are helping to bless Israel.
And of course, as well as the store, there are other ways to support CUFI as well. One of those is through making a donation. There are various ways to donate to CUFI, either as one-off gifts or by becoming a partner with us through a regular monthly gift. For all of those options, if you would like to contribute towards the work here at CUFI UK, then please go to www.cufi.org.uk/donate.
And all of the links are in the description. So if you don't want to type it in, just click on the link in the description.
Also, you could really help us, actually, by sharing this podcast. So if you have enjoyed listening, we've appreciated your time. And if this is something that you would like to share with others, we would urge you to please to hit subscribe, to hit follow, and we want to get the word out, but we need your help. So thank you for standing with us. And that concludes today's podcast.
Yep.
Until next time, is there anything else you want to say, Alex?
No, just God bless, and thanks for standing with us. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Until next time, let us continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and for the Jewish community here in the UK.
Yep.
We will not remain silent. God bless you.